So, hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Good evening. I'm Council President Nikky Fortunado Bas, also District 2 representative. And we're having a conversation tonight with some amazing community leaders to talk about our community vision for San Antonio Park. So I want to welcome some amazing guests that we have for this live stream. With us today, we have Jinhee Ha, who is with our Parks and Rec Advisory Commission and who is the representative for San Antonio Park. We also have Andrew Park with TRYBE. You probably have seen them out at San Antonio Park doing food distribution and all kinds of other amazing work with the community. And then we also have with us the amazing K-Dub Williams, who is a leader in our skating community and directs for the town skateboarding. So I'm excited to have this conversation. We all care very deeply about San Antonio Park. It's the oldest and one of the largest parks in all of Oakland, with a community garden, tennis courts, soccer field, a playground, a Head Start center. There's amazing programs at the park, and there's so many more things that we can do. Some of the things that I love include the Malcolm X Jazz Festival, for example. So I want to hear from you all about the programming, the services, the infrastructure that can make our park even more amazing. And this is also tied into a process that the city is leading to identify and hear from the community your needs, your goals, so that we can update our master plan. So again, I want to just spotlight these leaders, ask a few questions so that we can hear your community vision for San Antonio Park. So my first question is to talk about your personal or your organization's history and connection to San Antonio Park. Why is the park so important, both historically and presently, to San Antonio neighbors and to Oaklanders? So I'm just going to pick one of you to start. Andrew, would you mind starting?
Sure. Thank you so much, Nikki. Honored to be here with just everyone on this call. San Antonio, I don't know that much about the history. My wife is more into that, and some neighbors I know who own Victorians who, I'm friends with. They're all about that motion. For me, San Antonio Park is meaningful, especially in light that with TRYBE, we mainly were working in Manzanita and Bella Vista. But while doing all of that, some of the young guys who grew up in the park, who were part of the recreation center, before it closed down, between like 2005 and 2014 or so, who played on the basketball teams, who now are fathers. And whenever we do a barbecue, they want to do it at the courts, the Marshallunas courts at San Antonio Park, or they want to play football there. Just having grown up just in and around the park, we really saw that as something that was like underutilized but well loved, and underutilized by families, but definitely a lot of youth go there from Roosevelt and Oakland High and Dewey, and we're all about working with youth, so we were just in and around the park a lot. And I think the last thing is that with TRYBE as an organization, we were doing a lot of pop-up events there, whether it was Second Saturdays, flag football games with Oakland Parks and Rec, or pop-up playgroups, just really trying to bring the youth movement, like programming, back into the park. And I think that I've just seen that anytime we do anything, people are really attracted to it, and they love the space and the expanse, the oak grove that's there, the walking trails, being able to walk the perimeter of the park, all the trees that were planted by neighbors. So it's something that's like well loved, underutilized, but a lot of desire to see it, to come up.
Great. Next, let's hear from Jinhee. Jinhee, tell us about your connection to San Antonio Park.
Yeah,
thank you. It's so important.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. I mean, as I'm a relative newcomer to Oakland, I've been living in Eastlake for 5 years. That's nothing compared to some of the other folks that I've talked to about San Antonio. But so I have a very easy, I'm able to walk or bike to the park very easily. Something that just has really kind of blown me away about San Antonio is just how multi-generational it is, and how many just different types of activity that you can find there. There's everything from the tot lot to, you know, elders doing Tai Chi and the tennis courts, to the soccer games happening, community gardens. It's just kind of like chock full of so many different types of spaces and programs. And, you know, being on PRAC for the past few years, we talk a lot about issues of access and equity to open space. And I think one basic fact about San Antonio that just can't be discounted is just how large it is and how beautiful it is, and how much activity and groups that can be accommodated there, and just how amazing of an asset this is to the city and the neighborhood. And you know, obviously having access to open green space is something that's becoming more of a necessity in living in urban areas. And I think the flexibility that these spaces and that San Antonio provides is something that's priceless. And you know, we saw this with you know, a lot of the pre-pandemic activities that, you know, the jazz festival that I think Nikki, you mentioned, and other gatherings that occur at the park. And throughout the pandemic, I think the city was able to leverage the Park and Recreation Center facilities to be able to provide additional services that are not necessarily just park related, but I think these are just like some examples at how these spaces are just so important to the city of Oakland and the community.
Thanks for sharing that, and thanks for serving on our Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. K-Dub, what about you? Can you tell us about your connection to San Antonio Park and why you think it's so important?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. When I first moved here from Long Beach, working with kids in Parks and Recreation down there, I moved here to Oakland, and I would say 97, 98. I was hired by Ethel Howes, who was working for Parks and Recreation at that time, and she assigned me to San Antonio Park to create an after-school art program where we did murals inside the center there. And I would be there after school where the kids would drop in, either from Oakland High School, Roosevelt, or the kids in the community, as well as just other people in the community. There used to be drumming on top of it, which was beautiful. And I used to come to the parks in the morning to set up to get ready for the kids, and it would just be just a beautiful park sitting there looking down, you know, and just seeing the soccer playing going on, seeing the different activities. And so I was there for a couple of years in the late 90s doing art programs with kids. And then I ended up taking a job at Oakland High School teaching art there. And then some of the kids would come over and we created amazing art programs. And I remember the first meetings for Malcolm X Jazz Festival, Eastside Arts Alliance, and Elaine and the whole crew. So the park has always been near and dear to me, even before I even thought about doing anything in skate or recreation. But I did see catalogs that would come into the center for park and recreation, and they started having skate elements being sold, wanting to sell to parks for this recreation that was coming into our inner city communities. And that's when I really got aboard to start doing other things within skate. San Antonio is just always a beautiful park for me. I would love to develop something there if the community wants it. It's just a gorgeous park, and I've always loved it from day one.
Thanks for sharing that long history with the park. That's beautiful. So for folks who might just be tuning in, this is Community Visions for San Antonio Park. I'm Nikky Fortunado Bas, the council member of District 2, together with three amazing community leaders who are leading incredible work in our parks, as well as my staff person, Leah Azul Saliveri, who many of you may know through her work in the neighborhood. As many people know, the city is leading a community engagement process to hear from folks about your needs, your goals for the park, so we can update our master plan. I really want to make sure that this process meaningfully engages the community, that your voices are heard and that your input is taken into account, that the city is transparent in how we are making decisions. So I want you to know that part of what we are doing is working with many, many departments in the city to lift up what we're hearing from all of you and to also help answer your questions. And back to our vision, our priorities. I want to hear from each of you when you envision a new and improved version of San Antonio Park. or maybe it's even going back to some of your fond memories from many, many years ago. How do you think the park can better serve our communities, and what do you see? What do you think should be our top priorities as we envision an updated park? And I'm not just talking about the infrastructure, that's just part of it. I'm also talking about the services, the programs, all of the activity that I know that you all know keep our parks vibrant. So why don't we start with Jinhee Ha this time? Jinhee.
Sure. I think something that I've heard a lot of from community members is that the priority should be in sort of being able to take stock and fully utilizing what's already there, and making sure that the needs of those areas are being met. I've heard a lot about how, the recreation center, how people would love to see it staffed and programmed as it hasn't been active for the last few years. And so being able to sort of fully utilize that space, and being able to invest in a program or staff there that could be an active presence at the park, and be able to kind of key into some of the other programs that are already happening there even without staff. I think some other things to keep in mind. I think that would be really great to think about as we think about like visioning for the park is kind of what I touched on previously with how parks and these recreation centers can become more kind of like community centers or facilities where there's mutual aid happening amongst neighbors, or the city being able to use the space for providing other services through this recreation center, and not maybe just thinking about how, this is a park and that's all it is, but kind of thinking, dual or triple ways of how we can sort of use these spaces to better serve our community. I think some other things that could be helpful to keep in mind throughout the community process are just like thinking about changing needs or thinking about maintenance. I think the last, Nikki, you touched on the previous master plan process that occurred in 2003, and now it's 2021, and who knows what the city and the neighborhood will need 18 years from now. And so I think it's always helpful to bring into the conversation ideas about maintenance and how to think about how we want future generations to be able to love this park, and how to account for the flexibility of being able to bring in different programs. Like how do we do that? Instead of being able to sort of be like completely locked into one thing, and having a really complex situation once several groups come in and they want to do something else. So I think being able to just talk about that, I think, is helpful during the community process.
Thank you. Andrew, what about you? What's your vision? And I know when I asked you what your vision is, you're not just speaking for yourself, you're speaking for TRYBE and the many, many families and communities that you work with.
Yeah, so our perspective is definitely coming from a place where youth and families are at the center. So what we see, is just zip lines from the trees at the top of the park that go down to medium or maybe all the way down the park. We see art incorporated all throughout the park without taking away from the natural beauty, God's beauty that he naturally put there, but also like benches maybe around some of the oak grove trees. We see lights at the basketball courts, so we can have, and then the bleachers done up a little bit nicer, so we can actually have some hanging out while you're watching, the basketball games. The soccer fields, doing fine. It's well used, but when you're up top at the pergola, that we can cut those trees down so we can have more of a view of, what is the San Francisco Oakland Bay. We can put some tables up there or have date night. It's a beautiful view. We can create some more barbecue areas where families can celebrate quinceañeras, and there could be like 3 or 4 large birthday / celebration, type of coming of age parties going on San Antonio for free or for low cost, where the garbage cans are serviced, and there's an active sort of park management group that's managing all this. I see, and I'm hoping I'm setting this up for KW to just hit out the park, just along all the tennis courts, just like a full skate park, and that's really centered around the local youth who live on East 15th, 23rd Avenue, 13th Avenue, all these young skateboarders who I think if they were encouraged to keep it beyond middle school, they would. They get better, they like it, they're connected. And just to do a run from the top of the tennis court, the very top one down to the bottom one, and have rollerbladers, scooters, etc. There maybe if we're going to build something, maybe build a pavilion where we can have activities happening in the rain or other inclement weather, and the centerpieces for all this is, and this is really I'm speaking for TRYBE here, is that the work we've been doing there for the past 8 months, it's really felt like coming home. And the vision we have is to really build out a full service, trauma informed community resource center where you have programming starting from birth, that early childhood 0 to 5, all the way to seniors, where seniors can come there. We've had so many seniors come out during the pandemic to volunteer, work the line, do PPE, make up vegetable bags, make up hygiene kits, and they just we're like, are you sure? And they're like, hey, we got to live. We're out here. We love the work that's being done. We also want to give to this, as Jinhee said, the multi-generational feel of San Antonio Park. And I would say the last thing is that all of this would be centered on people, because I love a park, but a park is nothing without people. And I just envision just like 30, 40, 50 community members being employed here on a full-time to part-time basis, doing everything from ambassador programs to running youth and children's program, have a couple skate teachers, art folks who are doing stuff within the park, and just having it funded both by philanthropic and by city, public private, so that we can have a vibrant place that, instead of like just smashing on people and saying you can't do this, you can't do that, that through positive life-giving activities, it naturally just like quiets down all that other stuff and makes it a place where everyone can feel safe in their definition of safety, and also be able to thrive and feel healthy and do all the stuff that we should be able to do that's not quite happening right now.
Thank you for that. KW, what about you? What about your vision? And I do want to ask you, because I know that we've been working with you around Bella Vista Skate Park, and folks have expressed interest in San Antonio, and I know you even created some designs. Also, make sure you tell us about the skate park ideas you've got.
Yeah, well, the first of all, everything from my end and my energy is all about what the community wants. Before I put any energy in anything, it's all about what the community wants. If the community wants it, then I will do everything I can to try to make it possible. I mean, San Antonio, like I said, I've been so familiar with the park for so many years that I would love to have staff there, to make it safe for folks, to keep the park safe, the infrastructure, the lights, the bathrooms. This common sense stuff should be all top notch before any skate park activity is happening. Secondarily, on my end, it's about recreation. Especially in this time of COVID, where our kids are just not doing anything recreational. I mean, parks is part of it, but it's parks and recreation. And skateboarding is something that I latched on to because you don't need a coach or a team or anything. It's something that you can do by yourself, And Oakland is so underserved in terms of, for a population of like just under 500,000 people, we really only have one public skate park. And it's a shame, as far as what we're doing all around, other cities are doing. But regardless, I want to try to make that different, and for our kids in that community to be able to have a place in their own neighborhood where they feel safe, where they feel comfortable, they can learn and grow. Of course, we would bring programming for lessons. I'm associated with the Skate Like a Girl crew. I'm associated with a lot of other skateboard companies like Vans. They've expressed interest in the project. I took a whole team of theirs by the park right before COVID. They came up from LA. So my whole energy is all about what the community wants, and if it's so, then we would do everything possible to make it a top-notch park for that area.
Excellent. Thank you all. So for my last question, and you all have already touched on this, so you can touch on it even deeper, or you can add some final thoughts. I want to talk about what you've already raised in terms of centering this vision around people, around making sure that what we do is community driven. I completely agree with that. I think it's important for us to really think about what specific groups and populations we should be centering as we talk about park improvements and go through this community engagement process. So I want to invite you to say a little bit more about who those specific groups are, how the city can do better to meet their needs, or what you think the needs are that we should lift up through this process. So please feel free to share some additional thoughts as we really think about centering people in this process. And for this round, let's start with K-Dub.
Mm-hmm.
K-Dub, do you want to say more?
Oh, I couldn't hear you. You had dropped out.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, I
let's
mean,
just change up the order if you don't
I
mind starting
apologize. Yeah,
first this time.
no, no problem, no problem. Well, I do know from infrastructure, as far as my outreaches over the years, when Councilman Bell, I attended a few sessions and community meetings with him, probably about 3 or 4 around the community. I've done over the years. Ideally, San Antonio was really my first choice for a park, for a skate park before Defremery. But Defremery just happened to come through, and we just got it done. I know the skate community is there. I do know that the community has changed over the years, especially since 1998. But it still seems like there's a need, and I get texts or DMs and calls from emails from kids, grown-ups, and other folks who would like some kind of activity there. Skate elements there. We would do our best to reach out to the community if that's what they want. And then we would do another design process involving the community and the kids who would like to partake of it, because it has to be a part that comes from them for their levels. At the same time, a part for them to be able to advance as well. So I'm very open and adept to having community meetings about park design. I've had people come out and paid for park designs just for this, for the area within a tennis court. I do know that there's other elements possibly happening, like the fire station or whatever else. So if it's something that fits within the San Antonio scope and the community wants it, we'll go all out and do what we can, and we'll have all the input from the community as possible. Yeah, I'm very open to all of that.
Thank you. Jinhee, what about
Mm-hmm.
you? Thoughts on specific groups and populations to center in this process, or any additional thoughts about how to move forward in a way that really centers around people?
Yeah, I think it'd be great to hear from, everyone who currently even uses the park, and I think, I touched on the sort of multi-generational aspect of the park, and centering the conversations with folks who might not always get involved in these, kinds of community engagement processes, and I know that the process has accommodated different languages, which I think is great to see. And trying to create an inclusive process with that. I think sometimes it's also helpful to be able to even just like have staff walk to the park and be able to have conversations with people who are there. I know there's an online survey, but I think sometimes it's also helpful to just be able to talk to people when you're out there at the park. I know that soccer is something that's extremely popular at San Antonio, so I wonder if there's a kind of a way to engage with the various different groups that play soccer at the park. I know there are some nonprofits that have had some programs there, but there's also a lot of different sort of like casual games that happen. And being able to engage with elders and families that are using the park who don't necessarily speak English, I think is, it's always great to try to reach out and engage with those folks. I think, I think the potential to bring in other sort of novel uses to the park, such as the skate park that K-Dub is talking about, and I think Andrew talked about previously, a program that's not currently offered at other different parks in Oakland, I think is really exciting. I've heard from several people about the skate park, different kind of flexible courts, potentially a dog play area, and all the different groups that are engaged with those ideas, I think would be great to talk to. So I think being able to kind of think about the current users of the park, and also future users who might want to engage in a certain program but don't necessarily have the means to do that yet.
Thank you. Andrew, what about you?
Yeah, I kind of said it before, of just really centering around neighborhood youth and families. I think in particular because they not only might not have a voice, and I'll throw the soccer, certain soccer demographics into there too as well. It's very vibrant, and I think some of the nonprofits there already have a voice, but some of the unincorporated, as Jinhee said, of soccer groups that are there, there's a lot of life. And so not only might they not participate in a formal community engagement process, but also in that they are the ones who are, I think, really going to, on the day-to-day, make the park feel safer. I don't think it's going to be the police. It's not going to be city staff. It's not going to be, tribe staff. It's just going to be, do they feel comfortable coming? And do they feel comfortable in setting the tone and the culture, contributing to that? Obviously, I think it's in partnership with the city, nonprofits, neighbors, etc. But I think we must engage them and center them first on it. And of course, we want to reach out to everybody and have a real community engagement process. But I think that if we have limited resources, and who are we going to, for instance, I'm not going to query, folks who want a dog park, because I know what time it is with that in Oakland. I'm just going to it's going to be more about hey, the youth really hang here. Who's hanging here? Since we've been there, we know who's there on Friday night in the pergola. We know who's there on weekends, doing this. And there's also major issues that we can dream forever, but there's some people suffering who are living unhoused there. There's trash. There's condoms galore. I don't want to talk about the negative, but these are the obstacles that naturally the community, we must hold ourselves accountable for, and we must step into. But in order to do that, I think that we've got to create an on-ramp for people to have access and to have agency and themselves really, and we can't do anything for people, just provide the opportunity and really center them on it. And that's really when I specifically have people who grew up in and around the park, young African American men, Cambodian, Southeast Asian, young Latino men, and it's just and a lot of Native women and et cetera, et cetera. So these people, their families, just really engaging them on a deeper level to say, hey, this is your park. We knew some other stuff happened and you may participate in that, but overall you have fond memories of this park. How can we make it so that you can bring your children here? You can say that I want to, instead of saying, oh no, I will never let my kid do what I did here. It's no, would you want to bring your child here, and would you let them just roam the park around and feel okay with that? And the only way that can happen, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 city staffers will not, and what's going to enable that to happen is to have youth and families and different seniors, different people around at all corners of the park using it and helping us to feel that culture.
Thank you, Andrew. So as we wrap up here, I want to show more of the slides. There's some amazing pictures of the park, all the different physical assets, all of the beautiful activities through sports, through festivals, and there's also a few slides about the community engagement process. So Jinhee, Andrew, K-Dub, and also Leah on my staff team, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time here. I want to make sure that we are doing what you all have been talking about, and that's making sure that we start with people, that we first draw out the community vision for the park to continue this process. And I do want to recognize, I mean, many of you have long histories with the park. I know there was a master plan in 2003. We are not starting from scratch. We are making sure that all of the history of conversations gets carried forward into the current process. And very importantly, for you all to participate in this process with the city, there's another round of meetings that is coming up at the end of March. And as Jinhee said, these are multilingual meetings. So you can see the information here. You can reach out to my office. There are also going to be several decision-making points. I think K-Dub mentioned that there is a proposal that the fire station in the neighborhood get relocated to the park. I want to make it clear that I don't yet have a position on that. I really want to hear from you all in the community. And I hope that you'll also be open to hear from the city and our fire department in terms of what are the benefits. And we also talk very openly about the real concerns that I know exist out there. I want to be able to have everyone listen to each other, for me to listen, and also to make sure that the information is transparent. And so as you all are sharing questions, Leah and I are working with our city staff to help answer those questions and make sure that this process is meaningful in terms of your input as well as transparent. But again, there's another slide with some of the decision-making points. Maybe we can see that slide. In the summer, you'll see that there'll be some decision making that the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission will be doing regarding the master plan. And Jinhee is one of the commissioners. It's a volunteer commission, so thank you for your service. And then that goes on to the City Council. Regarding the firehouse, that will have to go through not only this community input process, but also the Planning Commission, and then to the City Council. So there are other points of engagements. There are decision-making points so that you can contact your decision makers, but we really encourage everyone to get involved. And my office will continue to listen and to facilitate more conversations so that we can really lift up what folks are talking about in terms of programming, partnering with community-based organizations, making sure we have staff for the rec center. There's so many different things that we've been hearing about, which I want to support. So that people will feel like the park continues to be our home, a safe place, and we've got incredible programming there for everyone to participate in. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll add some more comments as we post this online so you know how to continue to be engaged. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening and a good weekend.